You're quite full.
Collective Awakening podcast, sharing truth and knowledge in this time of conscious awakening with Chris and Stephen.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the Collective Awakening podcast. Absolute pleasure to be with you, myself and Stephen, once again. And we're really looking forward to this episode. We have a special guest. We had Sandy Ingham, who's a medium and psychic artist. Been really looking forward to speaking with Sandy. So, welcome, Sandy, to the Collective Awakening podcast.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. I find these interviews really exciting.
Oh, wonderful. And as always, when we talk to a new guest, I think a great place to start is your journey and your journey connecting with spirit and doing the work you're doing now. How did it all begin?
With my birth.
Yeah, we know.
Literally with
Reincarnation. Yeah.
Well, I never understood that anyone else, or rather everyone else, didn't see and talk to the same people I was talking to. Yeah. So, you know, people would look at me a little oddly. Even as a child, when I started to talk, you know, I would always have my friends who no one else could see. So that part of my journey came with me at birth some 75 plus years ago. And now, in my older years, the art, which came from nowhere because I can't draw for the life of me, not at all. And, you know, that sort of started when I was 60. Oh. So, you know, we're going back almost 16 years. Yeah. And it started really with, I would go into my lounge at night to watch my favourite soap. Now, we had a huge sort of ivory leather corner group, you know, and I would sit in the corner, and I always took my mail with me so that I could just deal with that. It got another little job out of the way whilst I was watching my soap. The only problem with that was I heard the music come up for the soap, then I heard it come up again, and there was nothing in between. So I thought, strange. And I would say to my husband, also sat with me, what just happened there? What did he say? Where did she go? I had no idea. And I thought I must have fallen asleep, you know. Anyway, that went on for a few weeks, actually. And I had no idea what was happening until one day, because when I did my mail, I would keep the till receipts and the empty envelopes for recycling.
Yeah.
Okay. So some weeks on, I had to leave the room in the middle of the soap. And I got up and was walking down to the bottom of the sofa. It was quite a big one. And at the bottom, we have a little table, coffee table. And as I walked around it, I put down what was in my hands without having any idea there was anything in my hands. Just because I was, you know, it's like being in that half-wake state and you don't really want to wake up, but you've got to go to the bathroom like that.
Yeah, I could understand that.
Absolutely. So I'm in that sort of foggy state. But I put down what was in my hands and went to walk around the table when there was movement on the coffee table, and me, thinking I must have knocked something off, immediately looked down, but was shocked to see a pair of human eyes looking up at me, but they were drawn human eyes. Now, I can't draw. I never have been able to. Not to this day can I draw at all. And I did ask Leo, my guide, about this, you know, and his reply was, I needed it to be that way because whoever you are, we are essentially made up. We're spirit having a human experience. And so we are spirit in one part of are who we are, and then we are the human on the other side, and they're quite separate, but living with each other. You understand? So
Yes, I do.
he said, if I could draw myself, I'm a trance artist, so when he came in to use my hands, if I could draw, my subconscious mind would interfere and go to do it the way that I do it, if it was me as an artist. So he needed me not to have any knowledge of art whatsoever or any abilities in it. Although as a child, I used to do what I now know is a lot of drawings of sacred geometry. The little boxes and the squares and the,
Yeah,
and
know
I
it
had
very
no
well.
idea. I had no idea what I was doing as a child, but that's what I did. I was always strange. So, so I'm looking at these eyes and thinking, whoa, I've always thought one day that I would love to draw, but I never did. But strangely, throughout my life, I would buy a tube of paint, never touch them, or a paintbrush, or a painting pad. I even once bought an easel. And my husband's looking at me, as if I've gone quite mad. He's saying, what are you doing? You don't even draw, let alone paint. I said, well, one day I will. I have multiple sclerosis. And I always felt that if I was confined to the wheelchair, I would have an attempt at art. You see, that's what was in my mind, I think. Hard to know in this business, isn't it? Spirit or
Yeah,
spirit and
very
activity
much so.
at the given time. So I said in shock to my husband, look, I was totally in shock. I mean, it was an amazing thing. I swear the eyes blinked at me. We all know they don't, but they did. They did.
Yeah, I know what you mean with that because I've seen some drawings from psychic artists, but even sometimes pictures, and you feel like the eyes are watching you, or the eyes are moving. There's life there. There's
Leos
energy in them.
absolutely do that.
Yeah,
And I think, where were we? Australia. I was working in Australia doing a show. So, no, I'm wrong. Am I? No, I'm not. We're in Australia.
yeah,
There are so many experiences that blow my mind, honestly. And however many years old or years I've been doing this and experiences in it, it still absolutely blows me away. Some of
yeah.
the things that I think, wow, Leo, that is amazing. I never sort of think about myself in what I do. It's
Yeah.
always been about spirit and what they're doing with me, So, on this occasion in Australia, doing a live show, and Leo said before we went on stage, I have to work with another medium because I'm a trance artist and I don't speak. So, once Leo's ready, my head goes down, the pencils come up, and I'm out of it. I know nothing until Leo stops me. So, on this occasion, before I went on stage, I said to the medium working with me, Leo is going to attempt to precipitate colour onto the black and white art. I only ever used a charcoal pencil, nothing else. And it did, in fact, happen. There was this little girl, she must, 4 or 5 years old, maybe. Beautiful little soul, but known in her lifetime for her very clear blue eyes. And thankfully, we had 3 or 4 cameras on the show. We got some at the back, one in the center front audience, and of course mine, which is over my hands. So, and then projected up so people could see who's coming out my pencil.
Yeah.
And they love that. It must be an amazing experience. I'd love to experience it myself.
Yeah.
But I can't see that ever happening. However, if I could put myself down there and leave my hands up on stage, that'd be great. But we can't do that. And yes, sure enough, but the medium forgot to tell the audience this experiment was going to happen.
Right.
She forgot to tell the audience. So they didn't know that I wasn't using coloured pencil. And of course, the cameraman did, and the medium did. But at the end, there was a big rush to check that the cameras had picked up what had happened up on the screen. And sure enough, they had. But the actual picture, still black and white, as far as I know. And so that was an exciting experience. Pretty sure it was Australia. You know, they all run into one. When we'd fly in from Australia doing maybe a month or two's work out there. And then I'd have a night at the airport and then out to America without ever getting home. It was pretty full on. I don't think I could now.
And I can understand what you mean with you know, in working with this with spirit or the spiritual work. I always say they never cease to amaze me.
Oh,
You know, I don't think there ever comes a time I don't feel come when they say, "Oh, I've experienced it all," because there's always something that just, wow, that is amazing. Or that I call it like the sweet spot, which is a little bit what you talked about, not being an artist yourself, but being able to do this work, and it's the undeniable, which is that
absolutely.
wonderful place. But what I wanted to ask you, Sandy, is a little bit about your guide, Leo, and actually, when were you first aware of him?
When I was 60, I identified who he was in his
Yeah,
life. But from
yeah.
my birth, he came with me. He's been with me my entire life. But I used to call him Leon. I thought he was
Oh,
Leon because I was a little girl. And as I'm growing up and into my teenage years, he grew up with me. And so he didn't have any facial hair as a young person. But as we got older and older, until I got to 60, and then I used to just talk to him. I've talked to him every day, always I do. He's just been talking to me about the time he spent in the Grand Pyramid in Egypt. He actually got to stay in there overnight for a few days, in fact. And he was talking to me about that. So we talk every day, you know, and he tells me where he wants me to go and what he wants me to do. So, and of course, we do eventually, but life is busy. But so, yes, I've always known him. But when the art started, and honestly, it was a complete shock to me, then I knew it wasn't me because I can't draw. And I knew it wasn't my husband because he can't either. And so I start asking, who are you? You know, I need to know who this is. And if I'm going to go into an altered state and be out of control of my body, I need to know who you are. And so I asked for a week or two and nothing, no response. So I thought, you know, getting a bit mutinous. Anyway, one more time I asked, and then strangely, Chris, projected outwardly, you can't see my arm, it's disappeared, projected outwardly, this image came towards me and passed across me in a diagonal manner like that, so I could get a really good look at him. And I said, thank you very much. Still don't know who you are. My education in art, you could write on the stamp. No idea who he was. So I said, want your name? A little while later, because it didn't come, I wasn't given the name, but the face seemed vaguely familiar. So a short while later, my daughter came up from Cornwall to see me up in Yorkshire. I lived in Yorkshire then. And we were talking about mediumship generally and the different means that different people employ to connect. Well, I don't do anything. I just speak and they speak back. I find it easiest. So, but we hit upon the tarot cards, and I know a lot of people are very adept at using them. but I'd never even looked at any, and I wouldn't have it clear. And of course we were just chatting. So I said, I'll get a pack. There's bound to be some information, instruction in them. We'll have a look. It's a fascinating subject, mediumship, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so.
So again, a day or two later, I went into town where we had a bookshop. Now, what you won't know is that I'm 4'11". I'm little. and I went into the bookshop, and on a big shelf about 6-7 feet up, nowhere I couldn't even reach with a stretched out arm, was the spine of a box. And on it was a particular painting, a picture, which I knew to be, in my words, because I'm non-artistic and non-educated in art, an old picture. Or now I would say it was a Renaissance picture. And I thought, oh, my daughter's an academic. She'll love that, you know. So obviously I couldn't reach. So I went down to the desk where this tall young man was serving and asked him if he could get them down for me and to take them to the till. And I would, when I finished looking, I would come and retrieve them. And when I got there, he'd wrapped them up in a paper bag. So I just wrapped it and posted it on without even looking at it. Obviously, that's what Leo wanted me to do. So roll on another few weeks, and my daughter came up again to Yorkshire. And with her, she bought the tarot pack for discussion. And I walked into my lounge that, you know, a little after she arrived. And she'd been in there first. And she'd opened the tarot pack. And there was indeed a book inside. But the painting, the picture on the lid, so on the back of the book, on the box, was the face. The face. And my heart skipped a beat because I knew that his name was bound to be there.
Oh.
So I'm really sort of, oh, you know, so excited. And I walked around the sofa and approached it, picked it up, and there was his name, Leonardo da Vinci.
Wow.
Absolutely amazing.
And that's how I found out. And I'd always called him Leo. And, you know, within 1 year, a matter of months, I was out on stage doing this. And if you'd even suggested me going on the stage, talking to anyone, you would have laughed. I'm just not that person. You know, I'm very much Sandy and Sandra. You know, Sandy can talk all day to everybody, regardless of their profession. Only because I cheat, they tell me what to say, and I'm good at repeating words. You know, but they do so very accurately, and that to me is the greatest privilege in my world. So yes, that's how I found out who he was.
Absolutely amazing, an amazing confirmation for you as well.
Oh, it had to be, because I just wouldn't do what I've done.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, I've traveled the world, sitting on stages, drawing pictures when I can't draw, totally and absolutely relying on spirit to be there. But I've missed out a part of the journey, really, which I think is inspiring. Because before the acknowledgement of my work in public, which was courtesy of Stephen Holbrook, I went to a show one night, and that's another story, but let me just go back a little. Do I want to come forward? Where am I going here, Leo? Oh, don't do that. Sorry, I don't want him to start communicating with you.
We don't mind.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've got people listening in or watching in, but it would be more likely them he'd go for.
Oh, yeah.
Which is he started to do, naughtily. Anyway, I was asked to go and join Stephen on stage and do a few shows with him. And throughout this time, Leo at home would suddenly sort of trip me out and pick up a pencil and start drawing at home. And one day I sat down, and I'm right-handed, instead of reaching out for the pencil with my right hand, he wouldn't let me use it. It just sat there. And I'm knowing I need to get that pencil, but this one wouldn't go and get it. My right arm wouldn't go and get it. So my left hand did. My left hand picked up the pencil and took it to the paper. And I'm still at this moment aware of what's happening. So I said, Mike, that's my husband, he seems to want to use my left hand. And he said, go for it, So, okay. And he drew a picture with my left hand, which was 95% as good as he did with the right. But he still wasn't finished, not at all. And roll on a few more days. He picks up the pencil with my right hand. And then he picks up the pencil with my left hand. I've got 2 pencils, but only 1 pad. So I said to Mike again, he's wanting to use both. Can you get me another pad, please? He got me another pad. Sure enough, Leo drew 2 people at the same time. At the same time. And there's lots of evidence of this on my website in various film clips and YouTube clips and what have you that are on there. So and he might draw mum with this hand and dad with that. Indeed, it was Australia, and a cameraman in and talking to the audience on their way out, and he went to a lady who'd had 2, the first 2. I always let him do it first to open a show, because human eyes don't work like that. So I found that it bothered me a little. So we would do that first and only once. Mm-hmm. But this lady, I'd drawn her dad with 1 hand and her mum with the other. If I remember correctly, one of them had just passed to join the other. So it's really rather beautiful that 2 separate pictures and both of them. So, it's really exciting. And as I was about to say, but this disappeared off as I want to do, I forgot where I was going now. Right, remind me quick. What was I talking about?
So we're talking about the 2 pictures at once that we were doing. And we're in
completely
Australia.
Forgot where I'm at. Completely blank. This is what happens. Is it age, or is it everybody trying to talk to me and I'm trying not to listen?
Yeah, don't worry. Well, it happens to me, so have you got it? Go for it.
I think I've got it. Yes. When we started working with Stephen, beforehand, I had a good long chat with Leo. Because if I had come out into this life saying that I was working with Leonardo da Vinci, can you imagine? I'd have been torn to shreds for one thing. Yeah. I was a complete unknown for another, and I wasn't prepared to go there. So the conversation Leo and I had was that I would refer to him only as Leo, because then no questions hopefully would be asked. Because, as I say, if I claimed him, then what we were doing would become more about him than what we were doing together. Yeah, and so he was just Leo. And for a good 6, maybe 7 years of working with Stephen, I had by now done a great number of newspaper and magazine interviews and things. And they all ask that same question. Do you know who the artist is who's working with your hands? And I would say, I had it all off pat. It was so simple, honestly. Well, it doesn't really matter who it is, does it? The fact is, he's drawing people's family members. And then I would sidestep it away from the subject. But this one day, some 6, 7 years in, I was opening, she asked the question, did I know who the artist was? And I was taking my breath to respond with, well, it doesn't matter, when Leo very firmly said, own me. So my heart stopped beating and I gave it a thump to it. Joking, but you know what I mean. And I mentally sent back, don't be silly, they'll absolutely crucify me. He said, trust me, ever so calm, trust me, own me. So I took a deep breath and said, well, actually, I do. He's Leonardo da Vinci. But she heard me, didn't she? She heard me. So then, inevitably, the conversation turned to him. And is he with you all the time? Yes. Yes, he is. And will he talk? Yes, he will. Well, I asked him first, will you talk to her? And he said he would. And he was talking to her. And I can't remember whether it was her one or whichever, but they start asking silly questions of him, and he doesn't tolerate that. I think somebody asked him if he had a dog. I mean, we're talking to Da Vinci, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Can you not think of anything better than that? He got a little bit, enough. He just said enough. And that was that. However, it's rare for anybody to ask silly questions of him. When I talk to scientists who are dying to know about him and talk to him about his life and times, and quite a lot do actually. And they'll go away and check it up and find that his answer are absolutely, completely true and accurate. I think the first thing that lady said to me, can he tell me something very personal about himself? And of course he's listening and he's responding into my mind. Yes, I was gay. In your parlance today, we didn't call it that in my time, And I said, well, in our world, he would be said to be gay. And you could hear a tippy tapping on I call it a tutor, I don't own one, computer. I could hear her tippy tapping to look up, see if anybody knew that. And she found it, of course. And there's a lot more. We talk constantly. And the scientists who want to talk to him and learn about how he came to be the genius he was. And I must tell you this, it's so exciting. He wanted me to go to his exhibition in London. Now, I don't care for going to London. I was born in the Derbyshire Peak District, At my comfort zones out in the forests and the woods and the trees and the hills and the rivers. I'm happy.
We're with you on that one.
Exactly. So, well, yes, you look how close you are to it yourself. So I'm not comfortable in cities. I'm really intimidated by the big buildings and what have you. However, he wanted me to go. And lo and behold, I get to be doing a show just 12 miles outside London. So I thought, and I rang up to try and order tickets. And when they finished laughing, they said the tickets all went right away. However, we have a walk-up allowance every day. If you get here early enough, you might get in that way. And he's driving me still to go to this blooming exhibition, Trafalgar Square. So I do like to try and do what he wants me to do. There's always a reason. Anyway, we went early the next morning, and I got there, and there were people a mile wide and a mile deep queuing up to get into that exhibition. And I thought, there's no way on this earth I'm getting in there. And I start then to say, you've dragged me down here. And there's no way I'm going to get in there, Leo. Absolutely. Fancy dragging me. And I'm muttering. However, I do mutter. I went to the security at the head of the queue, and I said, to be fully fair to Leo, is there any possible chance I can get into this exhibition today? Again, he laughed. He said, absolutely none at all. Look at the queues. So I thought, okay. So I went to the other gate round the back. Thought I'd try that. Went up there. Excuse me, is there any way I can get into here today? None whatsoever. So that's done it. We're walking away from the actual venue, muttering at Leo for dragging me down to the place I don't like to be. And I could feel him laughing at me, you know. I really could feel him laughing. I always know when he's laughing at me. But my phone rang, and it was my daughter. Mother, where are you? Oh, you might well ask. I'm just walking away from the exhibition at Trafalgar Square. There's no way on this earth I can get in. And she said, well, I've just put my computer on and 2 tickets flashed up for the Da Vinci exhibition. But there's a catch. It's in 10 minutes time, because there are each person's allotted 10 minutes. They go in 10-minute blocks, you know. And we had 10 minutes. And we had to get them, the tickets. She said, I'll buy them. I'll send them across, but you'll have to get them printed. So I'm left in the middle of Trafalgar Square. My husband legs it off to try and get these things printed. And we got there, and they were Chinese names. We are not Chinese, and I think it's fairly evident that we're not. However, we got them, he got them printed, and we got in literally with 3 minutes to spare. So I'm saying, okay.
I'll give that one to you.
I have to give them all to him, because he never fails.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah, they never do they?
I'm walking down these stone steps into this. It's essentially a big basement, because there are no windows. It's very, the temperature and light is very firmly controlled, because it was the biggest exhibition of Da Vinci's work in one place ever. So now my husband's very tolerant. He's not really particularly interested in art, you know, so he's having a bimble around, and I stop in front of this one picture, and as I'm looking at it, I felt the shift in energy, you know, the one, I'm sure, and the picture just fell off. So I'm looking at a blank canvas, and then I see Leanne. I do keep doing that. My daughter's Leanne, and of course Lee and Leo, I mix them up. So I see Leo's hand come up, and I watch him. It's almost as if, for me, it's in slow motion, but it's actually over in a matter of minutes. And I watch him reconstitute that painting. So I knew that the order in which he'd done it, and where he'd used brushes and where he'd used his fingers, because he would paint with his fingers, which he still does. When we do it, he'll often use the fingers, using a brush or whatever, just for the tight, like the eyes and the finer detail. So that was very interesting. But my husband looked back and thought, what the heck is she finding interesting about, you know, to stand there for 10 minutes looking glued? Little did he know. But on to the next, and the plans, I think it was the helicopter plans. And I've actually seen the helicopter, because I've been to his home in Paris, in France, in the Loire Valley, where he actually spent the last 3-4 years of his life and died there. And his grave is there. I went to that. He wanted me to go to his home, you know. Anyway, that was all gorgeous too. And anyway, again, the same scenario. I watched everything just drop off the page of the plans for the helicopter. And then little by little, every little cog and wheel, I saw how his brain had designed it and put it together. Very exciting. Same with the tank and the car and the bicycle, they're all there. And they built them at the Clos Lucé villa, which is in the grounds of the King's Villa in the Loire Valley. Amboise, it's called. Fascinating journey, absolutely fascinating.
Absolutely amazing experiences to have there for you as well. Really incredible insight. So
Oh,
hand over to Stephen. because he's.
Wow, I've got about 300 questions there, Sandy. But
I knew he
By
would.
the
I knew he
way.
would.
well, the first thing is, while we're on the subject, so where did Da Vinci, where did Leo get his inspiration from then? Was it when he was last on the earth plane? Was he linking with spirit at that time, or where was he getting all his
Higher.
information from?
Higher.
Higher. Well, will you explain that?
I will. Leo was a medium himself. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Yes, he was a medium. And of course, it was very difficult for him to live in his time, because who do you have a conversation with about designing a helicopter in early 1500s, you know? So his life was, there were very few people he could actually talk to. And his partner, his long-term partner, he called Sal, but he's Giacomo. He could talk to him, and he talked endlessly to him. But the inspiration came from the extraterrestrials.
Wow.
Mm.
Oh,
And
amazing.
I don't tell you that I also have had a conversation with them, because I.
Oh, you're talking to the converted here, Sandy. We speak to them on a weekly basis.
Okay, I will just
Yeah.
tell you about that one issue, because
Yes.
it's only this year, and it was late night, and we were doing this painting, and it was one of the it was an extraterrestrial initially, and with the elongated, I forget, this arm is a short one and it won't go up, but with the elongated heads, skulls. Have you seen them?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, they're still there to discover these days. You know, they still do discover these very long-headed species, and they came from up there in a fiery chariot, as it were, and were known as gods back in the day. And they landed mostly in Egypt and Peru, and you know, all these places that we know today that are very historic. And one of the mediums who requested a guide painting, they always know them, you know, but surprisingly, this one was one of those. She's quite an established medium, though, you know, so it wasn't surprising that she gets someone like that. However, the painting was nearly finished. It was late. So it was bedtime essentially, and my husband went to bed, and I said, just leave my desk light on, and it's a little daylight bulb that shines onto the easel, onto the paper, you know. Otherwise, the entire room was blacked out. So I said, leave it like that. I'll come and switch the light off, because I needed to leave my phone there to charge. I'll go to my bathroom and I'll go and prepare for bed, and I'll come back and pick my phone up. So you leave that light on, shut everything else down, which is what he did. So some 15 minutes later, I went back into the room to retrieve my phone, and Leo sat me down in front of the painting and picked up whatever to finish it. We finished it. But as my hand was actually finishing the painting, I became very aware of a presence behind me. And I generally don't like this. Too close in the dark. I hate being startled. I'm not an adrenaline junkie. I don't like to be, you know, I don't like that. So I said out loud, I am aware that you're there. And I know that you want me to turn around and look at you. And I will. But please don't be on top of me. Don't be really close to me. Let me do it in my time. So this is the chair, actually, and it's a swivel chair. So I took a deep breath and very slowly turned. I didn't move the chair, still where it was, right in front of the easel. So I turned, and the whole bottom wall of my room is glass doors. And as I say, the only light in the room was the one on the easel. So I turned round, and there, clearly in the door glass, I thought reflected, was that being that we were painting. And I thought, oh, that's strange, reflected that far away. However, and then I thought, no, it can't be, because I'm sat right in front of the picture. It cannot be reflected down there. Cannot. My whole body was covering it. So I realized, and then the head moved and moved slowly towards me. And I thought, that's enough.
Yeah.
But then I'm going to say she, because there's no hair, no eyebrows, nothing like that on this species. Not in as they really are. Very beautiful. And she has, like, I think they were like amber eyes, and the pupil was not round like ours. It was more oval shaped. But and I knew that because we just painted it. And then I said, well, I do realize that you want to talk to me. And she started talking to me telepathically. And in that, she gave me a very profound message, because this was within this last year. And it was about what's happening in the world. And I won't go into detail about it, other than to say that there were terrible things ahead of us to face. And they would not intervene this time, as they had many times before. But that we would survive if we stand in unity, if we stand together as the human loving species that we really are. Because, over the last 3 years, we've been very firmly separated.
Yes.
We've been thrust apart, and, and people have gone along with it out of fear. But it's essential that we come together to overcome this. And that was her message. There was more to it, but again, what's happening in the world does not touch me at all. I've spent my entire life sort of viewing this world I live in objectively, if you like, or should I say, as an observer rather than a participant. Do you understand?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's not. It hasn't. It never frightened me. Everything that's ever said to me, generally, I will analyze. And I will think, well, if I do this, what about this? I always look ahead at the consequence of every move. And as I did with this situation, when I watched our politicians saying, you need to do this, you need to do that, and I'm thinking, that doesn't make any sense. That is wrong. And Leo is constantly saying, do not participate in any of it. Stand away, stand back. Do not participate. However, I was warning people to no avail, because many wouldn't listen, of course. But equally, the ones that needed to be alive and well today are, because they did. However, there we go. That was that. So I do get sort of a chance to talk to them about their world. And because if we do have other people listening here, they will be saying, well, we found skulls, they were human. And of course, there are, and they came out and in that sort of almost human form. But they had much larger brains than we do, hence the elongated heads. And in fact, I've got my book here. And if you look at my silhouette, which is my silhouette, you'll see, I'll show you.
Yeah, please do.
This one, if you look at the silhouette of my head, you can't really.
Yeah, I can see it.
It's slightly longer than a normal head. Yeah. Oh, that one would have been better to show you, actually, because that yellow thing isn't. No, there we go. Can you see
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
my head? That is not hair. That's my skull. But yeah, it's sort of elongated a little. But yes, back in the day, because this is anything from 5 to 10,000 years ago that they were here on this earth. When they disappeared as soon as they came, as fast as they came, they did what they came to do. They were here for a long time. They left. Nefertiti, you remember the tall hat?
Yes.
She had the elongated head. No hair. None of them had hair. They used to wear wigs, which was nice as well because it's so hot in Egypt. So they tell me. So they didn't want to have hair. Anyway, after they left, the people living who saw them as gods wanted to emulate them. So when they had babies, they'd lie them on boards and put boards, literally boards, to reshape their heads, to elongate their heads. But the scientists tell me, you can tell if you find two elongated heads and one was forced with boards like that, you would know which they were because their heads in the growth were like ridged, whereas those that naturally were born with the skulls that were elongated, there's no ridges, it's a smooth surface of bone. And my skull over the last few years has been changing. I have a deep ridge down one side of my head in my bone. It's as if my skull has separated. It's actually on this side. So not in the center where you would think, but off to one side. I've got this deep ridge in my head, in my bones. And the whole surface of my skull is changing shape. Odd, but it is. Anyway, rattle on, Sandra. Shut up. Stephen. Sorry.
No, I just find it incredibly interesting. So do you feel that you are so do you feel like you're not of this world then, Sandy? Do you feel that you are?
I don't think I'd say that. I'm definitely of this world. But it's just a strange thing that's happened to me in the last few years. Of course I'm human. I'm here. You see me, I'm talking, I'm normal.
Yeah.
It's just the things that abilities that I have are not what most people would call normal,
Right, or not of this, but really interesting, Sandy, really fascinating.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing to hear that guidance that we've heard as we come into a time. Things are constantly changing in the world and moving forward, and but we've found with a lot of our guests that we've spoken to in reflection of the last 3 years, the same message being brought that was being received. Don't buy into this. Don't go down that fear route. It's important that we come together, and that for me has actually been a huge positive of the last few years because I do feel we are coming closer together. I see people starting to value community a little bit more than they did before, and realizing actually how important it is, and that's a little bit of what we've lost. So I feel that message that you received is so true to me. Yeah.
It is. And strangely enough, we find that the spiritual side of ourselves are coming together, And I get people contact me to book readings and what have you. And I always ask the question, how do you know about me? Because there's so much stuff out there. I don't advertise at all. So I always ask the question, how do you know about me? Because Gwyneth Paltrow recommends me. I'm in a best-selling book, a chapter, I think it's chapter 12, or is it 16? Anyway, the entire chapter's about one of my cases, which was a reading I did for this lady. And her husband's grandfather came and his mother to speak to me by name. They gave me their names, and she said, well, that's actually my husband's grandfather and mother. And anyway, that was it. I moved on because I tried to stay with her family, and she told him about it. Now, there's an old family story, almost 100 years old, there with her husband. And that was that his grandfather had a younger brother. You lose track of minor things. But his brother joined the army in the First World War underage and was never seen or heard of again. So there was nothing they could do to locate what happened to this young brother. And it was a sadness in the family, of course. And his thinking was, if she really can do that, and he'd grown up searching for anything about this great uncle, nothing there, nothing. And he thought, well, if she really can do that, I might learn about what happened to Grandad's younger brother. So he booked a reading, unbeknown to me, because I never know anything about anyone and I never want to. I go in totally blind, as it were, and it's the way I like it. So in comes Grandad, Walter. And I said, oh, he's telling me that he's with his young brother that was lost. And that would be George, I said. George. And of course, he's getting excited. He's searched for this guy all his life. And all of a sudden, this George, and he showed me an image of himself. And he was a child, but he got on this like military uniform, but his hat was sort of perched on the side of his head, which I thought very strange. I haven't seen one of those before. And I said to him, he's very young. He's always a military man, and he's got this rather strange hat on that's perched on the side of his head. And of course, that's the only photo they've got of this guy wearing that uniform. So all of a sudden, George started saying through my mouth, G22, G22, G22 of 4. And of course, I'm saying this and I couldn't stop saying it. It was just pouring out my mouth, G22 of 4. And until in the end, I said, for God's sake, write it down so I can stop saying it. So he did. He wrote down G22 of 4. And we'd no idea what it meant. But a cemetery was mentioned, a cemetery. And I saw the image of like white crosses, rows and rows and rows of white crosses. And he knew that it was like a military graveyard, a cemetery. So he went home and got on the computer and looked up this. And the G22 of 4 turned out to be, there were 4 sections, like 4 battles, if you like, or 4 theatres of war in that cemetery. And each of the 4 sections had a grave, row G, actual plot 22, G22. So he found this all unbeknown to me because he took that information away. But then some months on, he came back. He actually came to see me rather than doing the phone reading because he was quite a distance away from me. I was in Bridlington then. And he actually came, he drove up to see me from Leeds, I think he was, Leeds, something like that. Anyway, yes, I'm pretty sure it's Leeds. He drove up to Bridlington to come and have a reading. And he walked through the door with this, what turned out to be a plot or a map of the graveyard. He said, will you have a look at this? And my mouth said no. Put it down on the table, please, face down. And I wondered why my mouth was saying that because it didn't make any sense. However, he did that, and I picked up my pendulum. So I'm looking at a blank sheet. Yeah. I passed the pendulum slowly, 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 every inch of the map. And when it got to the bottom right corner of it, it started to agitate. And and then it started to swing. And it was swinging completely out in a circle. And I said, when it stops, put a pencil point underneath the point of the pendulum, which he did. And then when we turned it over, it was on G22 in the bottom left corner of the 4. And he smiled and he said, "I'm so pleased you've done that, because I actually now know that each of those G22 graves, 3 of them are occupied by named soldiers. The bottom left one is an unknown soldier." And I said, and in now this is important, I said, no idea what it was really, but he's giving me the name like something like Albert or Albertone or something like that, or Alberona. I couldn't just pin it down properly. He went back to his computer, and on the grave next to his was a private G.W. Albone.
Wow.
So that was confirming to Mark, he's called, confirming to Mark that is your great uncle's grave.
What a great piece of evidence.
Incredible.
And Leslie Kane, who actually wrote the book, because she also wrote UFOs. I don't know whether you're familiar with that book. International bestseller again. It's when information became available from the military, etc., about UFOs. And so she interviewed all these people about their experiences and what have you. They do exist. They've been existing in this world for thousands of years. And they don't do anything to harm us at all. They don't. They don't.
Yeah.
If they wanted to destroy us, they'd have done it long since. And immediate. They could vaporize us if they wanted to. They don't. You know, the ones I've talked to me about the reason they don't make themselves known to the public, or haven't done until recently, they've started to, is because we're such a violent species. The answer to everything is pick up the gun and shoot them, you know. So we're so violent, so primitive, they haven't done. But yes, so there you go. So many experiences.
What I wanted to ask you, Sandy, is a couple of things, which is, of your wonderful experiences that you've had, what advice would you have for somebody perhaps just establishing a connection with spirit, or just starting the spiritual journey, budding mediums and psychic artists themselves?
Firstly, I'd say stop questioning yourself. And that's the first thing we do, because I don't know, people seem to be expecting that there'll be trumpets, you know, and voices in ears. It isn't like that. It isn't like that. For myself anyway, and I can only speak for myself and my experiences, they speak to me telepathically. I don't hear a voice. It's just the information just comes into my mind, into my thoughts. And everybody does, but they don't verbalize it. If they vocalize it and they say, no, I've got it wrong, it's awful, it's terrible, I say, likely when I do readings, it's quite possible that you won't recognize a name immediately, but don't worry, because I know if they say it, it's right. But I don't expect people to have an immediate recall of everyone they've ever met and every circumstance they've ever had, you know. I mean, most things are very evident anyway, like they buried somebody and the family have put different items in the coffins. They'll tell me those things, you know, and a lot of them, which I think is amazing, make sure they're alone when they say that these particular words, or when they make this action, do this action, put something in the coffin. So they know that nobody else in the world but themselves and the corpse, if you like, the loved one, could possibly know that. So this is the way they do that. Now, the way I format my readings is first I ask them to identify their relationship. So instead of getting nannies and grannies and grumpies and grampies and all that stuff, it's mum, or it's mum's mum, or it's dad, or dad's dad, dad's mum. So I ask them to do it very precisely, so we're not messing about, you know, because people in their different grandparents have different names for them, little, you know, little loving names. I don't want all that. And just tell me who you are, please, thank you. And so they do. So I might hear mum's mum, or dad. So I know that we're talking to dad's dad. So I can say that immediately. And then I will ask them like this, you know, pretty please, any please you like, but can you tell me your name? You know, and again, no pressure, never any pressure. I never command or demand of them, ever. I'm always very, you know, if you could just give me your name. But I go further than that, because if they struggle to give me their name, and unlike the information, and this is why I say to people learning, don't have expectations. Let it just happen and trust that feeling that comes in, or that those words that suddenly enter your mind, or the image that you suddenly see. Because I do all of that, you see. And just trust it. And the sky won't fall in if they say no. Say, okay, not a problem. And then, you know, like me, I'll get calls later on. One lady in particular, she hadn't known her dad's family because they were in another part of the country, and she just didn't know of them. And I gave her like 7 names in a row. 7. And she didn't know any of them. I said, oh, please don't worry. You know, it'll become evident. So anyway, she rang her sister at the end to tell her all about the reading. And of course, she wouldn't know the names either, but she just found out that their brother was doing the family tree, and discovered that the 7 names were those of their parents and their 5 brothers and sisters, all of them. So you see, we're not expected to know all these things. Don't expect to know anything, and don't ever project it as fact, because that's a definite invitation for a no. So and I might say something like, I have the name Gordon. Do you understand Gordon? And that makes them think immediately then, oh, Gordon, yes, good Lord. Oh, yes, he was my mum's next door neighbour. He was so kind when she passed, and this sort of thing, you know. And I say to them, don't have expectations. Let it just happen. Just trust. Have faith in your guides, because they won't let you down. And we can't expect people to have immediate recollection of everything they've ever done. Experiences, you know, we don't. And a very well-known medium I read for when I was at a weekend seminar. His mum had passed, and he came to me for a reading, and his mum was immediately there with her name, which was lovely, and she recited to me all the things that had been put in her coffin, and he said, "You're right, all except for one. There was nothing put in her hand." And I said, "That's what she shows me, you know. So just ask around, it might have been one of your brothers or sisters." And I was sat having dinner later that same evening, and this guy had talked to his sister, and he said the only thing that was wrong was, she said she put X item, you know, that she got this particular item in her hand, and I knew that wasn't right. She said it was actually. I put it there.
Wow.
You know, so again, don't have expectations for everyone to understand everything immediately. You know, just say, doesn't matter if you don't remember or you don't know, go and do some experimenting, go and do some asking. And they invariably are validated that way. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's wonderful advice there. Just go with the flow of the
Just
river.
let it happen. Don't have expectations.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to teach starters beginners, developers, from the very beginning. Don't have expectations. What do you feel? What are you feeling? And one of the things, because I want to know how they've passed, I don't need gory details, but I do need to know, because it's part of that evidence, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I might feel a quick thump to my chest. That's generally a heart attack. That's how they tell me. And I ask them, let me feel what you felt. So all of a sudden I'll get this blow to the chest, and of course it'll make me cough. And I said, this must be a heart attack. Yes,
Yeah.
it was. Sudden, instant passing. Yes, it was. So, yeah, or I might get a real stomach ache. And, this will be maybe a pancreatic cancer, but I'll get the pain in my stomach. And of course, sometimes it can be savage, and I'll say, take that off, thank you. I've got it. And so but that's just me. And I haven't been taught to do this. I've not attended classes. I've not done any courses anywhere, ever. Just not done it. So what I do is what I've grown up doing, taught not by me, but my guides. Leo has taught me everything. And of course, it's never about, well, we've not taught you to do it that way. Excuse me? No, but they have. They teach us the way we want to work with them. And if we try to go
100%.
against that,
It's not going to work.
And one of the things that deeply offends me is when mediums come out with these little quips, especially learners. No, bless them, they don't know any different. But those that should know better say, don't feed the medium. I've had my breakfast. And I could give them a slap for that. Excuse me? Don't feed. One in particular that really upset me. It was clearly her dad. I was there. And she said something which was very accurate. I think it was the name. And she said, yes, that's my dad. I was going to go on and say, he's recently passed. Shut up. It's like saying, shut up, don't speak. And I'm thinking, oh my God, the opportunity for her to have a conversation with her dad there, because it's not about us.
Yes.
It's not about us. And I will always say to someone, another example, would you understand Peter and March the 3rd? Yes, Peter's my dad and he passed on March the 3rd. And right, well, he wants you to know this. And oh, yes, I remember that. And he did this. And he will say, yes, and do you remember that? And it becomes a conversation between them. Remember, we're just mouthpieces for them.
Yeah.
It's not for us to demand or
Absolutely.
command them and tell them how it's got to be because someone's taught them that. Another one, that deeply bothers me. Oh, you've got to wait 6 months. They've got to have been gone 6 months before we can communicate. Excuse me? Sat on the deck of a ship in the Caribbean at 8 o'clock one morning, and with a couple. And I said to the guy of the couple, oh, I've got Eric here. He just wants to say hi. And he said, I don't know an Eric in spirit. So I said, she doesn't know you. He doesn't know you. What's your surname? And he said, and he gave his surname. I said, he says he's Eric, let's say Blogs. And he said, well, no, he's definitely not in spirit. He's the one that dropped me at the airport last night. So I did what I always do. I looked at my watch and I made note of the time. So Eric literally had passed 3 minutes earlier when I looked at my watch, although UK time to Caribbean time, there's quite a time zone difference. But he literally just passed, and he was just wanting to say bye to his friend on the ship, So again, certainly they can. I've had people call me and immediately I've been aware that the one in particular, Dad had literally just died. And his body, she was sat on the bed with his body, and he immediately spoke to me. So, there is no time, and nor is there, because people will say, would it be all right if I had another chat with my dad? Maybe next week. I know I'm not supposed to. They say you've got to wait 6. And who said you've got to wait 6 months? No, you haven't if you want to talk to your dad. by all means, make an appointment and we'll talk to your dad. You know, it's not for us to impose restrictions on what we do. We don't do it for us. And they're not being held in this life because we're talking to them. Absolute nonsense. And one of the things that I love that Spirit say so often, the next person to say rest in peace, give them a bloody slap. We're having a ball.
You say that, Chris.
Oh, it drives. I could. Do you know what I can't understand, Sandy? Maybe, but especially when it comes from actually people in the spiritual movement or mediums who put about. All I can put it down to is it's what they've been ingrained in them if they've grown up. But I think they're not resting. They're getting on with the meeting all their ancestors and catching up
They've
with
come
everyone.
home. They're partying. They're celebrating.
Of course they are. They absolutely are. And that one lady, where were we? Can't remember which country, but I was doing private readings in my hotel room. And this one, it was her dad. No, it wasn't. It was her husband who passed and immediately came in. And he said that he was playing his guitar. They're celebrating a birthday. No, his return upstairs. They always celebrate it. And Uncle Eddie's here with his squeezy up thing. I always forget what they're called. Yeah, that thing. And Auntie Margaret's here playing the piano, and Uncle Joe's here, you know, with his saxophone. Thank you. and you know, and they just sit there with their mouth open. And I say, and this is why I say to Spirit, you know, if you can, please identify yourself so that the person I'm talking to knows 100% before we start conversation that I am talking to and about family. They'll tell me the details of the passing in terms of time and whether they dragged on for years and months, and somebody switched them off, or all of the, you know, they'll give me those details. But nothing gory ever, you know. But oh my gosh, the number of times they've said the next person to say rest in peace, give them a slap. Don't wish that on us, for God's sake. It's amazing over here.
Yeah,
have a great time. Oh, and tell Auntie Sheila happy birthday for next Tuesday. You know what I mean? Little things like this.
Wonderful.
Maybe, but.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember in the home circle that we were so fortunate to be part of on our journey. That was one of the first things that was mentioned to us several times when we returned. We're returning home. It's a celebration.
Yes,
you
it
know,
is.
It can be hard for us here in the physical, you know, but in spirit, they are celebrating and reuniting.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. Having a wonderful time, and it's hard for them to see us grieve on this side. But again, isn't he sad talking about this and seeing how much pain I'm in? And I said, well, no, actually, he doesn't turn his energy to sadness for you. He turns it into love to you, you know, to try to make you feel better. And I love the details they give me, even whether or not the person I'm talking to had a conversation with Auntie Pat just an hour ago. They were telling me about it. I heard what you said, Auntie Pat.
Yes.
And I love
that. The walls have ears.
Well, they do for sure. And another thing they tell me is that they're as real and as solid in their world as we are in ours. And of course, when I was first told it, because I'm very skeptical, you know, when I was first told it, I said, well, how can that happen? You know, and they tell me the way they describe it for people to understand. Imagine a really vivid dream, and you can feel it's real, that dream. If you're being chased, your legs are going like mad, and you're, you know, panting, or if someone you love has come and they came and they hug you in the dream, you feel the hug. It's real, but then you wake up. And that is because where they are is a different dimension, a higher consciousness, a higher dimension. And they don't, it's like not waking out of that vivid, beautiful dream. And a person I'm talking to quite a bit regularly now, out in a far other country, and she's lost her son. So she gets to talk to him through me regularly. And he has learned, I know you're not going to believe this, but it's true. He only does it for her. And I am aware that he's here actually because he loves being around and seeing what's happening. But she's on a computer. This is an iPad I'm on. I don't own a computer as such. I don't like the things. And I'm no good with technology, as you found out. So anyway, if she has to get up and go somewhere else to fetch something to show me of her sons, the camera goes with her. Now, this camera's on a computer set on her desk. So you tell me how that's happening in any way explainably. You just can't, can you? At first, she got up and she walked around the back of her chair and out of the room. And so did the camera. She didn't, I could see her whole body. She didn't have the computer or a phone or anything else in her hand. But the camera was following her. And I said, oh my God, he's panning out. He's panning around to follow you. And usually when this happens, if I'm talking to somebody, he'll do it to show you that it's true. So it wouldn't surprise me if you see any movement with the camera, if he did that. Young pilot crashed a year ago now, I think. But he's learned to do that. But if you tried to tell anyone that, they wouldn't believe you, would they?
No, but it's
they can do all sorts of things.
Yeah, there's some magical things that are absolutely possible, and I feel the more we open ourselves up and sort of break away from belief systems that restrict us, we can have some wonderful experiences. It's been absolutely fabulous speaking with you, Sandy, this evening. I feel we could talk for so much longer, but I'd like to save it for another episode. Because I feel you've took us on quite a journey, and particularly with what you spoke of with your experience in mediumship, and for those just starting out, I'm sure that'll be very valuable to many who are listening. It certainly resonated with myself and Stephen. I know it does, because very, very similar to what we think, if not the same. So we're definitely on the same page. So it's been wonderful connecting with you. Just before we go, is there any sort of closing words that you'd like to share with anybody?
Do you know who's watching this right now?
We do. There's a few people online on Facebook watching us at the moment.
Do you know how many?
At the moment, we've got about 12 people on with us.
Okay, because I have someone here with me, been here throughout, you know.
Yeah.
And I know that it's a fairly recent funeral that somebody listening to us has fairly recently been to the funeral of this person. I'm obviously not going to open it up because it's private. And I know this person wasn't going to go because someone else was there that they didn't want to see. But the fact of going brought the family back together. And that this person, I feel it must be a parent, because I'm feeling like it's the children she's talking to. The mother. Okay, thank you. See, I wasn't going to do that. However, if that person is listening and understands those particulars, I will read for that person.
I think you're talking about my mum there, to be honest, Sandy.
Oh God, is it you? Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, she's not. She's not been in spirit that long, and she's talking about us as there's 5 of us coming together. It's brought the whole family together. I feel really emotional. Sorry.
Well, I've got your mum here. I honestly, truly didn't know who it was, but can you just tell? I'm sorry about this, but can you just tell me if you understand the name that sounds like Paul or Paula, Pauline? Polly,
Paul's my brother. Paul's my
Paul's your
brother. He's
brother.
on the earth. He's been
Yeah, I'm not killing
struggling,
him
and
off. I'm not killing him off. She's mentioning Paul. So it is, what's just happened there is I've asked her to confirm whether it is in fact you, and she gave me Paul. But the information for me comes into the mind telepathically, but they don't give me names that way. They make me say them, which is why I stumbled over. She's trying to give me the rest of the family here, and I don't. Naughty, no time. We're out of time. So, but they make me speak the name. So if it sounds like another name, like Mark and Mike, I don't know which. But Mark, Mike, Matt, I can follow. I can trip over the names that sound the same or feel the same as they're given through my mouth. So it is your mum, darling, and she's so blooming happy that the family
I'm glad she
together.
is.
It meant so much to her, and I have got to tell you, she was so pleased to be to go home. She's saying Dad was there. I don't know whether she's talking about your dad or her dad, frankly.
Her father. It would be definitely,
Yeah. Well, her words again. I don't pretend to understand them, but Dad was there, and Mum was there too. They were there. They were there to escort me. So, and I wasn't afraid. I think she must have been either sleeping maybe or sedated when she passed. Does that make any sense?
She died in her sleep. She died. She had a heart attack in her sleep.
I know she did. Yeah, and that's what made me go to the. I felt it, and then it's just coming together. Sorry, so I've got your mum. She's perfectly fine. She promises you. She's happy. She's happy that you all got together. It meant so much to her because things needed to come together. You understand what she's talking about,
yeah.
And that for me leaves no margin for doubt.
I feel it. I feel the energies. My whole body's tingling.
Of course you do. Yeah. So I'm sorry about that, but she was not allowing me to get this connection broken without giving that message.
Oh no, please don't apologise.
Oh God, one more
thing. You shared that.
She's waving a card at me. So, and what I see essentially is this in my peripheral vision, and this is what she's doing. I can see the image of this.
You know why? Because she used to get so hot. She used to fan herself like that all the time. She used to get so hot. She used to pick up anything and just fan herself.
She's not hot now. She is not in a hot. But actually, no. She's laughing at that. Actually, she thinks that's funny, and yes, she was. Blooming, she never got over the menopause. She was always. I never went through it, but anyway, I must just conclude this, and I'm sorry I'm holding you up. It's not my fault. It's his mother. Have a word with her. She's having none of it. What it is she's acknowledging either a birthday or an anniversary, and it'll either be just gone or just coming up.
Yeah, it would be my sister's about 2 weeks ago.
That's
it was my older sister's. Yeah.
Well, she wants to acknowledge that because obviously she wasn't here for it.
Oh, bless her. She'll thank you for that.
Well, please do pass that on then.
I will.
And I will just put a block up here so she can't talk. Stephen.
Oh, lovely! Thank you so much.
That's
made my year. That.
Oh, I'm rightly pleased. They do this to me, and of course, it costs time. I'm supposed to be gone, but if anybody else is waiting to go, I'm sorry I've held you up, but I will allow you to close me out.
It's all meant to be for a reason, and that is the second time something like that has happened on a recent podcast as well. So Spirit are bringing that in for a reason and purpose, and thank you so much for that. Certainly don't worry about holding us up. It's all meant to be a great privilege always, but it's been absolutely wonderful speaking to you, Sandy. Thanks so much for sharing your time. If anybody is interested in knowing a little bit more about Sandy, we will post a website. Where you'll be able to visit. And I had a little look. I don't like to look too much because I like to learn from the person as we're talking. but I have looked at some of the pictures, which are absolutely wonderful, especially where you have the comparisons with the photographs. Yeah, so please check those out. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us, or if you're listening to us, and we'd love to speak to you again sometime, Sandy. Again.
Let me know. Let me know.
So thanks so much. Thank you, everyone, and lots of love till we speak again.
Lovely to meet you both. And
Thank you
I'm
so
going to
much.
apologise for his mother because she's naughty. Take care, guys.